Fresh off the bye week, NDSU is looking to continue their dominance in non-conference play. A 40-13 rout of a top 10 Eastern Washington team with a suffocating defense, holding the Eagles to just 73 yards in the final three quarters. Now the Bison turn their sights to Robert Morris, a team that has never beaten a Missouri Valley opponent. With a new defensive leader emerging, linebacker Dan Marlette now thrust into command of Code Green, while the offense continues to ride a rushing attack, averaging more than 435 yards a game. It's all systems go for the Bison as they look to keep the offense rolling in their return to the Fargo Dome.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Hello and welcome into the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show. I am Alex Egan. She is Beth Hool. We are happy to be back with you for another football Saturday here in Fargo. Off to a great start already. That's fantastic. We took a week off last week. Yeah.
Deep breath. Yeah, week off, you know,
So
you kind of
excited.
lose your stride.
Yeah,
so it's all right, Alex.
That's what it was. All right. The A topic today is obviously what the A topic was last time the Bison were out, and that was Nick DeLuca and his status. And unfortunately, Nick DeLuca will miss another game for the Bison. He underwent successful surgery on his meniscus this week.
That's right, a partially torn meniscus from the practice week going into Eastern Washington, had surgery that following Monday, so that entire bye week was a recovery. I got to see him at the Fargo Dome walking around. He's got a brace on it, so there is a bit of a limp. You'll remember seeing him warm up for that game. Yeah. He looked really good. Now he's had the surgery, so now that healing process begins, that recovery begins, and we get to start seeing him come back from another tough injury. But the Bison going to get him back this year, and that's the good news.
That is the good news. If it were up to me, I would have Nick DeLuca just hang out until that trip to Brookings and then say, hey, Nick, we need you here for this game against South Dakota State, and then we'll see you again in Frisco should we be fortunate enough to get that. They're not asking me how I would handle Nick DeLuca.
That's so weird, Alex.
It is weird, and that's not how things work. I get that, but that means that
I think a lot of people agree with you, though.
Well, yes.
I think a lot of people agree with you. Why waste him against,
oh, yeah.
you know, obviously he's not playing today. That's not an option.
Right.
He's still recovering. But you don't need him against Indiana State, Missouri State probably. No. You know, you just don't need him in those. And there's a difference between feeling good enough to walk and feeling good enough to take contact and to take a hit. And we got to hear from Marcus Williams 2 weeks ago heading into that Eastern Washington game. He told us that that difference between being 80%, 90%, and then 100% is a very big difference. And why wouldn't you want to give Nick DeLuca the opportunity to come back 100%?
Absolutely. So with Nick out, that means Dan Marlette will be back in the lineup again. He played fine against Eastern Washington.
Played a little better than fine.
Did a fantastic job against them, making some big plays for the Bison defensively. So Dan Marlette is in, and we got a little bit of chance to hear about what Coach Kleiman thought about him. Let's go out to the Fargo Dome now. Ryan Gellner standing by. He got a chance to talk to Matt Entz about Dan Marlette. And Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, very good afternoon from you, live now inside the Fargo Dome. And North Dakota State, like you said, spent the off season working on their defense and knowing that this defense was going to be phenomenal. When Nick DeLuca goes down, those things change a little bit, but North Dakota State really was focused on Dan Marlette all through the offseason, and we heard behind the scenes how well he had been playing. So it's no surprise that he starred a couple weeks ago against Eastern Washington. Now for North Dakota State, during the off week, they really worked on themselves, and they focused on themselves. In fact, they focused on three different plays, three plays which they thought they were deficient in. Two of those plays, it was wrong guy at the wrong place at the wrong time. One of those plays was a missed tackle. They are pretty confident they shored all of that up this week. And let's go back talking about Dan Marlette and him filling in for Nick DeLuca. He did do well a couple of weeks ago. They are excited to have him in, and it'll be interesting to see now that he's the man in the middle on this defense, how he adjusts this defense against a team that really wants to run first. Dan Marlette is the guy. You talk about Nick DeLuca, well, yeah, he started running this week. As Beth said, they're going to be very careful with him, working him in. We don't know a timetable on him. We know he's running in practice, and we'll see how he progresses through the week. One name for you to pay attention to during this game is Jabril Cox. The outside linebacker will play in this game, and the Bison coaches want to see him make a difference by the end of the season. So Jabril Cox is a player you should see today and a guy that you should need to know today. Now let's look real quickly at Robert Morris. Robert Morris, and you'll get to this, they start 4 freshmen on the offensive line, and today they are starting 1 sophomore. That sophomore, though, was backing up a freshman the last couple of weeks. That freshman is out, so really a rookie offensive line. You think NDSU might be licking their chops on this one, guys?
Thanks so much, Ryan. Yeah, you know what? He talked a lot there about, I really like what he said about Jabril Cox stepping up.
Yes.
And Jabril Cox is a guy that I know a lot of fans, I know you really want to see this guy. You've heard so much about him. We've called him a dude. You've gotten to hear about how he's come back stronger than ever. But you know what? At the same time, these are those moments where guys like Jabril Cox get to take their reps and learn a little bit about what Bison football is. And that's something I've been so impressed with Dan Marlette with. He took these reps, these same kinds that we're going to see Jabril Cox get today. He took those the last several years. And it took some patience with him. It was trying for him. We talked to him last year about some of that role that he played as a backup, as a guy just fighting for some reps late in these games. But it's paid off, and he's getting his opportunity today.
It certainly has, and we got a chance to catch up with Dan earlier in the week, and, you know, he is excited to be the starting linebacker for North Dakota State. Let's hear from him now.
It means a lot to me. I've been working very hard for an opportunity like this. As responsibility goes, it's more of a leadership role as a Mike linebacker. I got to be able to communicate better, and I got to be able to understand things better, and so, I mean, we'll see how it goes.
That's one of the things I wanted to touch on, was the communication. That is such an important part. You are the quarterback of the defense in that middle linebacker role. So it is very, very important that Dan Marlette has good communication with whoever's playing outside of him, the D-line in front of him, and the safeties behind him. He is the guy that's getting the plays from the sideline, from Coach Entz, and calling out the protections and the changes in that North Dakota State defense. So it's a very, very big game, but that's
important for some of our more casual football fans to maybe know. This is the quarterback of the defense when it comes to Bison football, or any defense in football. So it's a big role. He's taking off a lot. He said he's going to be maybe a little bit nervous running out of that helmet today, knowing he's the starter. Because you know what? You have to remember, he started last week. That was his first career start, but he didn't necessarily know. He was just firing off of adrenaline at that point.
And it's always easier to start on the road than in front of your home fans when you know you've got people in the audience. You know that there are people there to watch you. So there's just a little bit of added pressure being at home. I always like getting that first start out of the way on the road. It's a little bit easier, a little less pressure.
Back in our playing.
Right, yes. Let's move on. This is the start of a grind for NDSU. After this week, we are playing football from here until at least the week before Thanksgiving. It is 9 straight weeks. This is the final non-conference game for NDSU. Let's take a peek at the schedule if we could. This is an easier non-conference schedule is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, Coach Kleiman did not like when we said that.
He did not like when we called it that, but look, let's be honest here. Mississippi Valley State, Robert Morris, these are not the upper echelon of FCS teams.
And Eastern Washington didn't end up being what we thought.
They played well last week, picked up a win on the East Coast, and they're back home taking on a Montana team tonight.
I think they got a tough wake-up call against the Bison.
I think they did too. But there you see it. Robert Morris today, and then 9. This is the start of 9 straight weeks of football, including the start of Valley play in there. Is there a Valley game that jumps off at you?
Not one game in particular. That little gauntlet right there. Northern Iowa, South Dakota State, South Dakota.
And I would even go one further and throw in Western Illinois. The Leathernecks are playing.
I'm not as afraid of Western Illinois when it's at the Fargo Dome.
Yes.
They're so tough to play in Macomb.
Yes.
And you know what? I don't think Youngstown State is a walk either. But I do, Missouri State, Indiana State, I think we continue to see people getting reps, building that depth. Let's stay healthy.
Yeah, that's a big key for today. You'll also see that nice little peacock logo there, the NBC logo. We've got all the games for you with the exception of that Youngstown State game.
No matter what your program guide says.
No
we promise. We heard you today.
We've got you. So we are going to step aside here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. When we get back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Robert Morris and what they bring to the Fargo Dome today. Stay with us. There they are, the Colonials from Robert Morris, making the 1,000-plus mile trip from a suburb of Pittsburgh to Fargo, their 3rd trip to the Fargo Dome for the Colonials. The first one coming back in 2010. That was a playoff game. NDSU walloped them. And then the second one coming in 2012. That was not a playoff game. That was a season opener, and NDSU walloped them. So if history repeats itself, this one could be over sooner rather than later. But you never know. That's why you play the football game, right? That's why you play the game. Not much to add to this. Thank you, Beth.
No.
Let's get a little bit more information from Ryan Gellner, standing by with the voice of the Colonials. Ryan?
Yeah, thank you, guys. Chris Shovlin has been with this program since its inception, 24 years, 31 years in the broadcast booth. So you know a lot about Robert Morris, and you know a lot about this football team. It's a football team that comes up. You say they pride themselves on defense. They want to show that off today, but you also want to run the football today.
It's kind of the character of the coach, playing defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers as long as he did, but you're absolutely right. They do want to run the ball on offense if they can, and they've got a pretty nifty runner in Harrison Dreyer, so hopefully he can find some holes, find some openings against North Dakota State today.
It is a game on paper, I think, when people look at it from afar, that North Dakota State should win this football game. Your football team looks at it maybe that way a little bit. You even called it yourself a David and Goliath type game.
It truly is. I mean, it is a David and Goliath game, Ryan, and, we're looking at it as an opportunity to try to measure up against the best in the FCS, because we know the history here. We know the legacy here of North Dakota State football. So it's exciting for our players to come into a building like this, play in a dome. Most of them have never played in a dome before. We have so many young players. Some of them are, a year out of high school. So it's an exciting time for us just to be here to see if we can match up.
Last time you were here was a playoff football game. You remember the noise, or what do you remember personally from that football game?
I remember how exciting it was, and the noise level was deafening in here. There's no doubt about it. It was a great challenge. As a matter of fact, 2010 was our first trip and our only trip to the FCS playoffs, and it was a close game all the way into the fourth quarter, and then the Bison just kind of imposed their will on us and wore us down. We were here after that for a regular season game, the season opener in 2012, I think it was, and it was a 52-0 game. The noise level didn't get that high that day just because it was the Bison all over us.
Real quick, I got to ask you about this offensive line with so many young kids on it going up against a veteran Bison defense.
Yeah, no question about it. We had 5 freshmen starting on the offensive line until a week ago. Trevor Hicks, our left tackle, went out with a knee injury. He's going to be out for a few weeks. So Rene Rodriguez, who started as a freshman last year, who is now a sophomore, is going to get the go at left tackle. So, the weakest part of our ball club is probably the offensive line, and I'm only calling it weak because it's inexperienced. I mean, freshmen actually took over for the guys who were starting last year. So, they're better than what we had a year ago, but still, against North Dakota State, it's going to be an uphill battle.
Chris, we really appreciate it. Good luck. Enjoy your time in Fargo.
Thanks. I always do. I love this city. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Back to you guys.
I love to hear that.
So you want to start a bunch of freshmen on the offensive line. That's what you're saying there. This team, obviously, that is an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Bringing in a bunch of freshmen.
But they wouldn't be starting them if they didn't think they were the best guys on the field.
Correct. If you look at their two deep, it's a bunch of freshmen playing in front of a bunch of sophomores. And I want to single out one guy. I watched Robert Morris against Youngstown State. I thought that was the closest comparison that we could get to an NDSU. They beat Dayton. They beat VMI. That doesn't mean anything to me.
This is against VMI here.
Right, yeah. So, but Jimmy Walker, the quarterback for Robert Morris, fantastic. He was throwing on the run a lot because obviously he doesn't have great protection in front of him, but he can throw on the run a lot. He throws a good ball. He's got a couple weapons out of the backfield, two running backs that he likes to utilize. And
he's 18 of 26 when targeting his tight ends and his running backs. Those are his favorite targets.
So that's something to keep your eye on. If he's going to get rid of the ball quickly, you may not be able to get to him. And I think that's going to be part of the Robert Morris game plan today, especially with inexperience in front of him. You're going to want to get rid of the football quickly, but they do have a couple running backs that I do like.
Especially because those Tuska brothers might be running at you pretty fast.
That could be open season for the Tuska brothers today if they are.
But it's that gap behind the linebackers. It's that gap that's created.
You find the space.
Right, and that's where they're going to try and target, and that's where they have success targeting.
So it's going to be up to Code Green to play sound defensively, be assignment smart, and make sure that they aren't getting beat in those little spaces behind you, especially for the defensive line and the linebackers, to make sure that they're getting up into that space and taking away Robert Morris's options on offense.
I'm excited, though, about the things that Gellner told us right before we took a commercial break about what the Bison defense worked on this week.
Yeah.
Those meticulous approaches, those things that they were able to focus in on, these minute details. I love that. I'm excited, and I think this is an offense that they'll be able to execute some of that against.
The other thing that I like to take away from that is that they won against a top 10 team, and they found 3 things that they needed to work on.
You know what? That's a really good point, Alex.
3 things. That's it. Just 3 things. That should tell you how good the Bison are playing right now, especially for through those first 2 games. the tailgate this year is very, very, very exciting because we are
and they're not being rained on.
No, and we are just handing out money left and right. That is fantastic.
Well,
Mike
that's fun,
Morgan
too.
is the most popular man in all of Bison tailgate land, and let's go out to Mike for this tailgate report. Mike?
All right, thanks so much. We're here out in the tailgating area for another edition of Bison Tailgate Trivia. I've got my first two contestants, and what's your name, please?
Bree.
Bree, where are you from?
Alexandria.
Okay, so here's how we do it. I'm going to ask you a question, and if you get it right, then you're going to receive a $50 gift card. Ready? Here it is. What is the name of the North Dakota State Bison Marching Band? Is it Gold Star Marching Band or Yellow Star Marching Band?
Gold Star Marching Band.
Gold Star Marching Band is correct. Is correct. Bree, you win a $50 gift certificate to the True Blue Social Club. How easy, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Let's move on. Pressure's on. My next contestant, your name, please?
Charlie.
Charlie, what's the last name?
Cooper.
Where are you from?
Fargo.
Okay, you're from Fargo. Know how the game is played?
Yes.
Here we go. What is the name of the NDSU fight song? Is it On Bison or Leaving on a Midnight Train to Frisco?
Neither. It's neither.
I'll go On Bison.
On Bison, he says. That is correct. The fight song is On Bison. Thank you so much. We have a heckler in the back. Okay, you win a gift certificate to Lucky 13's Pub.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. That's how you play the game. We'll be back with another one right after this. Stick around.
Great time out there at the tailgate lots. Now I'm getting hungry. We're going to take a break here. We'll be back with more on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back inside our Fargo studios. We're getting you set for Robert Morris taking on North Dakota State today in a FCS matchup that puts number 2 North Dakota State back home 2-0 in the early going of the season. It hasn't been like a clean season in terms of injuries because you've lost a lot of guys even before the season started.
Yeah.
You lost a few guys in that first game against Mississippi Valley State, and then in practice the week before Eastern Washington. So injuries obviously have been the big topic of conversation. And let's go out to Ryan Gellner standing by with Dr. Bruce Pyatt for this Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Injury Report.
Yeah, guys, it is Sanford injury time, and let's talk with the doctor, Bruce Pyatt. And Bruce, I want to talk today a little bit about mouth guards, which is something we don't often talk about, but you see mouth guards at almost every sport. We're talking football, obviously, but you see them in basketball, you see them in baseball, you see them all over the place from the youth level all the way through the professional level. What's the big deal with mouth guards?
Well, maybe we can dispel some of the myth around it a little bit. First of all, clearly there's evidence to support that you wear a mouth guard in sports where there's contact, like football, hockey, those type of things, because we know it's going to protect the teeth, we know it's going to protect the gums, and it's also clearly been shown to be protective of the jaw, the mandible, and the maxilla to prevent injuries there, as well as probably the TMJ joint as well. Now, it comes about more that we talk about it in the realm of concussions nowadays, and what's the protection there. The science around that's a little bit iffy, but there is clearly a study that came out about 2009 that said of those people who sustained concussions, the concussion was to a lesser severity if they had a mouth guard in versus they didn't. So that really pushed and gave us more evidence that we should be utilizing them. The hard part is we're probably never going to have the study that proves that mouth guards are going to be an effective way to prevent concussions, because to do that study you got to line up 1,000 people in them and 1,000 people without them, and nowadays just nobody's going to be willing to do that from a league standpoint. They're going to want to protect themselves. So I tell people clearly there's evidence for why you need to wear it. If it's given us benefit from the standpoint of concussion, that's a huge plus too.
How far have they come in the last couple of years? Because you can see them as low as 99 cents. You can buy the $30 ones. Does technology within the mouth guard, do you think, does that matter?
You know, I think that the type of materials they use, there's more shock absorption in some of the newer materials, so I think that is beneficial, but I think having anything there is clearly going to be protective. So I don't think you have to go out and buy the latest and greatest. The key is whether the athletes put them in. If you watch the athletes that have them in, they're chewing them up and only a little bit's in between the teeth, they're probably not giving the effect you want. So to get it, it doesn't matter what you have as long as you're wearing it properly.
And I'm going to guess your message to moms as dads is put them in.
Absolutely. They should be on every athlete. Like I say, we know you can protect certain things, and some of the big stuff we're probably helping too.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
Dr. Bruce Pyatt, guys, back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. On the injury report this week, we just have the one name, and that is Nick DeLuca with the meniscus injury. But there were some other guys that Chris Kleiman had mentioned in his weekly press conference.
Well, that's right. Last week, or 2 weeks ago at Eastern Washington, you know, we were missing people like Brock Robbins, Dimitri Williams, some of these other guys. And he said that they were all going to run this week. They were all going to get a look. I don't really know that this is the week where you give any of these guys any hard reps. I mean, again, same theory that I said about Nick DeLuca at the top of the show. Why push these guys? Why risk something against Robert Morris? Why not take this opportunity to maybe get out there and stretch it out a little bit, take a few reps, but don't go.
You don't need to overextend anybody.
Yes,
That's
thank you.
The big thing. You don't need to overextend anybody in a game like this. When it boils down to it, this game means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. But there are 8 games still remaining on the schedule that mean everything. So
Absolutely.
There is no need to just run somebody out there for the sake of running them out there. I get where you're coming from there.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you on that point. That is just stay healthy.
Err on
through
the
this
side of
game.
caution.
Just stay healthy.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's the big thing. We have a fun segment that we've been putting together, and people seem to have really liked it on Twitter and online and everything. And that is, it's a fun little segment we call Heard This One. This week, we put a couple of guys who have been running very wild for the Bison to start the season, and we see how good they are at telling jokes. So here's another edition of Heard This One.
What did the lion say to Simba when he was walking too slow? Mufasa.
That's a good one. That's a good one. What type of music do mummies listen to?
What?
Rap music.
What did one cannibal say to the other while they're eating a clown?
What?
Does this taste funny to you?
I don't like that. Why did Octopus beat a shark in a fight?
Why?
Because he was well armed.
What is blue and smells like red paint? Blue paint.
How do you organize an outer space party? You plan it.
Right.
That's a good one.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Hi, and welcome back inside the Fargo Dome. This is the Farmers Insurance Bison pregame show. And guys, we are set for a game that I don't know if we know a lot about Robert Morris. Brian Sean, Lee Timmerman join us. Brian, let's start with you. You'll call today's game. Robert Morris is a non-conference opponent. The Bison come off a bye week. To me, it's more of a self-evaluation game, even though they've got to get ready for conference play, if that makes any sense.
Well, I think it's important for the coaching staff to continue to evaluate players. I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, too, Ryan, when you look at it. North Dakota State is still working people out on special teams. Who's going to be the gunner? Who's going to be the guy that's going to come out and block on some of the kickoff schemes? Who's going to play on punt coverage? There's still a lot of young players that have an opportunity to make an impact with their reps today and get a chance to get on the field once Valley play begins coming up here in just a little bit.
And Lee, at the same time, the Bison aren't going to change who they are. No. They still want to do the things they do well.
Well, yeah, and one of the things I thought was interesting talking to the coaches, one of them told me, he says, we don't need to invent anything today to beat this Robert Morris team, meaning let's just do what we want to do, establish the run. This was an offensive coach, establish the run, hit some passes early. But the Bison are just so much more experienced and so much more physical than Robert Morris. As long as they don't cough the ball up 5 or 6 times, this should be a game where they physically pound their opponent.
Still our keys to this football game. Let's get into what we think are the keys for this football game. And for me, it starts with the offensive line and the offensive line rotation. It's the final non-conference tune-up for North Dakota State, and the final chance for the Bison offensive line to gel before conference play begins next week. We all know the Bison love to rotate 7 or 8 bodies along that offensive line, and today it's all about quality repetitions. The Bison should see plenty of 3-down formations from Robert Morris. They'll shift, they'll bring a lot of defensive pressure. To me, it's identifying where that pressure comes from and who the extra guy is coming. We'll see how the Bison rotate up front. Maybe it's a linebacker, maybe it's a defensive lineman. Robert Morris already has 7 sacks this year. NDSU needs to make the adjustments up front and keep Easton Stick on his feet when he wants to throw and continue to open holes when the Bison want to run. On to key number 2, it is stop the run. On the other side of the ball, North Dakota State will need to stop the run to have success today. Robert Morris really is the first team that wants to come in and run the football against the Bison this season. They make no bones about it. They've already run the ball 40 times this year. LT, if you can stop the run for NDSU, that just makes sense. You got a pretty good shot.
Yeah, and again, this young offensive line, but you stop the run, you force the pressure on the quarterback, and I tell you, if they can't run the ball, that young man is in big trouble today. He'll have to try to get the ball out quick, and the other thing it really does is it just quickens up everything behind you. The linebackers can play to shorter windows. The defensive backs can play to shorter windows. So you stop the run, put pressure on that quarterback, and everyone else behind that defensive line gets a big smile too, because their day just got a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and finally, this game leads directly into conference play. And that's a big thing for North Dakota State. There's no going back. There's no redos. It's a long grind from here on out. We're only in mid-September. But for NDSU, gaining momentum and identifying just who they are, that has to happen today. Brian, gaining momentum and really evaluating who they are can really springboard the Bison moving forward as conferences around the corner.
Yeah, I think it's important to find out who can play, who can get out there and contribute, who can be out there and be a force for you, because you can't play all your starters on special teams. We talked about that a little bit. You got to give some of these younger players a chance to get out there. A guy like Josh Hayes, that's a true freshman. How much further along can he get as a true freshman? How much more can he add to this team once you get into conference play? You got to trust those guys, because we've all seen the important special teams plays, especially when you get into conference play.
And a lot of non-conference games. The conference really hasn't started one game on the slate today, but everybody kind of in the same mode this week, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. You just want to get through this one, get ready for next week. In fact, the Bison coaches use the bye week to already start looking at their first conference opponent, not to take anything away from their preparation this week for this game, but you know, during the bye week, already looking forward, because the conference games are the important ones.
And you hate to look forward, but that's kind of what fans do. Even as broadcasters, we start to look forward. This is going to be a good conference, and I don't know how good yet, but I get the feeling there's going to be quite a few teams looking at the early season as their chance to get into the playoffs. Wins matter.
Wins do matter. It's hard to gauge exactly where the Valley stands based on the non-conference schedule, because so many teams have not really played competitive schedules, so to speak. So we're going to know a lot more in a couple of weeks where teams stand. You'd have to say for North Dakota State, it's a little bit of a soft start when you look at Indiana State and Missouri State, 2 teams that are not picked to be in the top half of the league. And then once you get into that middle of October area with Youngstown State, Western Illinois, Northern Iowa, South Dakota State, that's where the grind starts for North Dakota State. Those last 6 games, we're going to find out what these teams are made of and who is left standing and who is left being the strongest team in the end of November.
And Lee, I'm not sure that every fan realizes what a grind this is when you go through the conference. This off week came at a pretty good time.
It really did. And again, you know, you're playing a team today you should play well against. And Brian mentioned that you kind of, I don't know if it's the right word, but you ease your way into the conference schedule, and then that meat grinder in the middle. But, you know, just make no mistake, the Valley is at right now anyway, so much better top to bottom than any other conference in the country. And I think some of the non-conference games, the one that UND played down in Vermillion was one of those that showed how good I think the Valley can be. And even those teams that you want to say middle of the road are pretty darn good.
The season opener was quite a few weeks ago, and as we see the crowd starting to file in here, this almost has the feeling after the bye week of another first game of the season for NDSU, doesn't it?
It really does, especially the way they manhandled Mississippi Valley in the opener. It really didn't feel, it almost felt like a scrimmage, so to speak. Eastern Washington feels like it was eons ago. I think that's what's so weird about that. That game feels like it was so long ago, and that really wasn't a competitive game either. When you look at what North Dakota State did in the second half, holding the ball for 24 of the 30 minutes in the final 30 out in Cheney. So I think for NDSU, you know, it's an opportunity for them to, again, get back at it, get back in front of these home fans, and then this starts a nice run here for North Dakota State, starting with homecoming coming next weekend at 1 p.m.
Final thought, this Bison football team, they want to get back to football. No doubt about it, though. That off week gets long.
Yeah, they certainly do. And I think one of the things about how NDSU influences the rest of the country, Coach Banasek from Robert Morris, I was listening to an interview with him. He said, we're a wannabe team. We want to be like North Dakota State. And what does that mean? That means play great defense and run the ball. He admits they're not here yet, but that's how NDSU influences some of these teams in other conferences around the country.
It should be a fun one as North Dakota State takes on Robert Morris this afternoon. You can catch it right here on the KVLY KFYR Bison Network. This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison pregame show. We continue on live in the Dome after this break. Back inside the Fargo Dome, and actually outside the Fargo Dome, soon to be inside the Fargo Dome. This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison pregame show. My name is Ryan Gellner, and we are on the concourse as North Dakota State gets set for their matchup, their non-conference regular season matchup with Robert Morris this afternoon. Kickoff just around the corner here on the KVLY KFYR Bison Network. Glad to have you along and glad to have you inside as we get set for another day of Bison football. It is a non-conference football game. It is a chance for North Dakota State to start looking at themselves a little bit harder and get themselves set, as we just said, for the long haul that is the Valley Conference. North Dakota State wants to do just that. Before we move forward, though, let's look back just a little bit and open up Herdline News. Herdline News for today is looking at what North Dakota State has done in the past. North Dakota State, Robert Morris, our Herdline News starts with some non-conference stuff, and that guy right there, Robbie Grimsley, who had 2 interceptions in last week's non-conference game, and actually that was 2 weeks ago, 2 pass breakups, 4 tackles in a big game against Eastern Washington. He's ready to go today, and we'll see how Robbie Grimsley played this week against Robert Morris. Grimsley now has 9 career interceptions for the Bison after taking one away and dropping one last week. On the other side of the ball, the Bison offense has been, as the kids say, ballin'. North Dakota State has scored 112 points through its first 2 games. It's the most in NDSU's Division I history and 5th most in the modern era of North Dakota State football. For comparison's sake, the 2000 team, they scored 132 points in its first 2 games and 169 points through its first 3 contests. Finally, who to keep your eye on? No surprise, it is Dan Marlette in this football game. He's starting his 2nd career game at middle linebacker for the injured Nick DeLuca. Marlette has 6 tackles on the season, and it'll be interesting to watch the junior from Sioux Falls be the leader in the middle of this Bison defense. He'll be the one responsible for game calls and changing things up and seeing how this thing goes on the Bison defense this afternoon. That's Herdline News for today, Saturday, September 23rd. 2017. Speaking of Dan Marlette, I had a chance to catch up with Chris Kleiman and talk about Marlette's progression from the preseason through right now. Here's that interview with Coach Kleiman.
Yeah, I really have been impressed with Dan. You could tell the game slowed down for him in the spring, and then that carried over into the fall, and that's typical of what we'd see on a 4th-year guy. He's in his junior year, but he redshirted, and the game has really slowed down for him. And he was a guy that was going to play a lot for us anyway. But then when Nick was injured, it just kind of sped that up a little bit quicker. And I thought he played really well against Eastern Washington, and I'm looking forward to him even being better in his 2nd start.
I'm sure it's a little bit hard in that it's a non-conference game now, coming off a bye week, and you're still kind of looking at this thing from 300 feet above, trying to identify exactly who you are. Specifically, Chris, what are you looking at today?
Yeah, Ryan, we're still in September. It seems like we've been here a long time, but it's September, so we have a lot of development still to do, a lot of special teams work, a lot of guys we're looking at, that extra offensive lineman, that other linebacker, that extra corner. We're going to get a few of those corners back in Dom and Trey Ford, so what can those guys do? So we're still evaluating everything because we know, regardless of the outcome today, we're going to need a lot of these guys in October and November as we get into our conference.
Chris, good luck today.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, it is another non-conference game for North Dakota State. You heard Coach Klein in their evaluation mode, looking at each position. Who's going to be in the rotation? Who's going to play for the long haul when the conference season comes up? This is the Farmers Union Bison Insurance pregame show. Still some things to do. We'll give you our final thoughts in just a little bit. We'll go back to our Fargo studios, and around the corner, the game between North Dakota State and Robert Morris. They're still tailgating outside, soon to be inside here inside the Fargo Dome. Kickoff is about 20 minutes from right now here on the NBC KBLY KFYR Bison Network. This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison pregame show.
It was hard traveling back and forth. The flight's not coming in like we want, so it was just much easier since we're retired just to come and stay.
They just get to be around me a lot. You know, I get to be around them. I get to see my mom. I'm a mama's boy, so I can always see my mom. I don't have to FaceTime her no more, and I can conversate with her.
Just emotional support, keep my head straight, keep my eyes on the right target, keep me focused mainly. And anything I need help with, honestly, just that's what parents are for, and I got great parents to help me out.
You've always been there for Trey all through his years of playing sports, and it was just so important to me to be here this last year because I didn't want to miss it. It was just so much I was missing.
A couple of the parents there of a few Bison players. You can catch more of this story tomorrow on the Bison Football Show with Chris Kleiman. That is live at 10:30 a.m. on KX4 here in the East, or on this exact same station out there in the West, or you can stream it online at valleynewslive.com. Beth, that's a story you've been working on here for a couple weeks and talking to not only the Dempsey family, but the Anderson family as well.
That's right. The Anderson family moved up here last year during Bruce Anderson's sophomore season. They just really felt like they needed to be here. They're both retired, so they've moved up from Florida. And then this year, the Dempseys joining them up here, doing it as well. Just an awesome example of the support that these players have, and so much passion and love for their kids, and these players embracing their parents. I don't know if a lot of kids would embrace their parents joining them at college, but these young men have, because they talk about how they keep them level-headed. You know, Bruce Anderson went through the injury last year, and he said that having his parents here alongside him really helps keep him focused and keep him grounded, and how important that's been. So a cool look at what they've been able to do and how they've been able to support their sons, and even Trey Dempsey's dad getting to witness his son play college football for the first time in person this year.
Yeah, in a senior season. Very cool. Looking forward to seeing that story. Let's get back to today's game and our Bobcat heavy lifting player. And Beth, we kind of went back and forth, kind of coming up with who we wanted to see as
I'm
this
not trying
player.
to pick on Cam Peterson. I want to put that out there. I like Cam. I really like him. I really like him. I think he's got the leg. I think he's really good, but I'm getting a little nervous.
And yes, I can see where people would be a little bit nervous with Cam Peterson, but the third point that I had on the Bobcat heavy lifting there was remain clutch. Cam has been a clutch kicker for the Bison. He has missed kicks that you would like to see him make, but that's going to happen. You're going to have a miss every once in a while. It just is unfortunate when all the eyes are on you. But Cam has been able to make the clutch kicks, and that is what is important. And the reason we landed on Cam is because we were talking about how this game is kind of the final dress rehearsal before the games really count in Missouri Valley play. So you want to see these guys go into that Valley play playing at their best.
Everything shored up.
Yes.
Yes.
That's absolutely it.
And I want to see that from Cam.
I'm sure we all want to see that from Cam, and I can tell you that Cam
wants
the bar
to see
very
it more
high.
than anyone.
Sets the bar
Absolutely.
very high for himself.
Absolutely. But that's just, I'd like to see it. This is a good opportunity for him to gain a little bit more confidence, shore up those things on those kicks he should be making. Because you're right, he has been clutch on those big ones. Hello, Iowa. You know, he's been there, he's done it. So I just want a little confidence.
Not to single out Cam, but we singled you out, Cam. So just make the kicks. Okay? That's it. That's what it comes down to. A couple guys that have been clutch for the Bison so far to start the year has been the running back duo. We're just talking about the two. That really has been a three-headed monster, but the running back duo of Lance Dunn and Bruce Anderson. And look at Lance Dunn's stats through 2 games. That's good for the first half of the season.
Yeah. Bison averaging over 600 or have over 600 yards of total offense this year on offense. Over 400 of those running the ball. Lance Dunn, 290 of those. Yeah,
it's been a really good start to the season. 5 touchdowns for him. He's broken off a lot of big runs. The number that I like there is the average per carry. He's averaging a first down every time he touches the football. So that's really nice. And he will be the first to tell you, oh, I'm getting great blocking. But Lance is doing a lot of that too once he gets into the second level and he no longer has the blocks in front of him. And that's great patience right there. The ability to get outside against Mississippi Valley State here. Lance Dunn is playing at an extremely high level, and it is key for the Bison that he keeps playing at that high level because they can't really afford too many injuries at the running back spot. They can, but they really can't because if you want to be an effective team like the Bison do, you got to have a number of guys to mix in there and keep them fresh.
And while these guys are good behind him and while they're showing promise, Ty Brooks had a huge game against Mississippi Valley State. It's a little bit of a different beast, though, once we get into Missouri Valley play. And you want Ty to be able to, again, gain that confidence and get that experience as we move through the Missouri Valley. We don't want to have to rely on him. And that's where it's so good to have Bruce Anderson, to have Lance Dunn.
Speaking of Bruce Anderson, let's take a look at what Bruce has done in this year, and he's doing just as good. He hasn't gotten into the end zone as many times as Lance Dunn, but Bruce is having a phenomenal start to the season as well.
And he makes those gritty runs through pressure, which is what I really like. He is a big boy.
He certainly is, and he runs like it too, and that's one of the things that maybe is a little bit deceiving for fans and even some of the media types, that these are actually really big running backs that the Bison have. Yeah, but you don't have, what King Frazier was. You knew what King Frazier was, but Bruce Anderson's about the same size. Lance Dunn, about the same size as King Frazier.
And when you look through the highlights and you go back and look at what Bruce has been able to do in these games, it's this right there. As he breaks free and dives into the end zone. That's what makes Bruce so valuable to this football team.
And it is kind of a little bit of a change-up because Lance runs so hard through the line of scrimmage. Bruce a little bit more meticulous, but both of them run
through there.
Yeah, they both run power very, very, very well. So that's really nice to see. And of course, we would be remiss if we were talking about Easton Stick and the Bison offense, because Easton wasn't really called upon too much in the Mississippi Valley State game. He wasn't really called upon too much in the Eastern Washington game, but he's been effective. And I want to show you Easton Stick's stats right now if we could. That completion percentage, that was a number that we were always talking about.
Absolutely, because you knew that Easton was playing well. You knew there was good football, but you just didn't necessarily always feel it.
Right. 72%. They wanted to see 65. He was 100% for Mississippi Valley State. We're 72% 2 games in. I see that number going up today. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we will get our final thoughts from the guys out at the Dome. Plus, we'll wrap it up here and then get you some football. 5 minutes left until we've got kickoff on our Coors Light countdown clock. Stay with us here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
All right, thanks so much. We've got some live music in the background as we begin our second round of trivia, and you're my contestant. What's your name?
Devin.
Devin, where are you from?
I'm from Fargo.
All right, you ready to play the game?
I sure am.
All right, so if you're going to answer this question correctly, I'm going to give you an opportunity for a $50 gift certificate. Are you ready?
Yes.
What is the playoff record of the NDSU football team at the Fargo Dome? Is it 18-1 or is it 16-4?
I'll go 18-1.
18-1 is correct. 18-1 is correct. Congratulations. You weren't sure?
I wasn't sure.
You weren't sure. You win a $50 gift certificate to Lucky 13 Pub. Congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Pressure's on. She did well, didn't she?
She did great. That was good.
What's your name?
Jason.
Where are you from?
I'm from Maplewood, Minnesota, just north of St. Paul.
All right, here we go. So here's your question. In 1990, the Bison went 14-0 for the year, winning a national championship 51-11 over IUP. Who was the head coach? Was it Rocky Hager or Rocky Balboa?
Rocky Hager.
Rocky Hager is correct. Did you think you might have gone the other way?
Nope.
No. Congratulations. Congratulations. You win a $50 gift card to the True Blue Social Club.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you both for playing. That's how easy it is. We'll be back at the next home game for another version of the Bison Tailgate Trivia. Back to the studio.
Thanks, Mike. I think Devin got the harder question on that one.
Tough question.
We're going to head back out to the Fargo Dome now. Brian Shawn and Lee Timmerman with some final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. For me, it's really about game control. Robert Morris wants to do two things. They want to play defense, and they want to control the clock by running the football. Does that sound like somebody you know? Yeah, exactly, North Dakota State. For me, this game is going to be fast-paced, meaning if you get up in the third quarter, go get something to drink, come back to the television set, you're going to look at your watch and go, oh, my goodness, this thing is almost over. The flow of this game is going to run and run. It'll be over before you know it. Brian, up to you.
All right, thanks so much, Ryan. Yeah, I think final thoughts for me. I'm excited to see Easton Stick put the ball in the air a little bit, get a chance to get a lot of different receivers involved. We saw the tight ends against Eastern Washington. Maybe the receivers get some more extended reps today, especially some of those guys like Dimitri Williams that have not had a chance to really see the field yet much this season.
Offensively, my final thoughts as well. Coach Hedberg, when I talked with him, he says we don't need to reinvent or invent anything against this team. We just need to be who we are. That's a really solid running team. Obviously, the ball's going to go up in the air, but it's going to be pounded on the ground today as well.
All right, Beth, back to you.
All right, thanks, guys. Alex?
Stay healthy.
That's all we've
Please
got.
Stay healthy.
That's our Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. We'll be back with more at halftime.